glad you guys are here. Hey, I don't know what the first half of your week has looked like. Man, I don't know what you're going through right now, but let me encourage you. All that matters is here and now. That you're here with us tonight. I believe that because you're here tonight, I believe that God wants to speak to you. And I believe that you're here for a purpose. And so I have the privilege of kicking off a brand new series that we're titling Reality Show. Everybody say reality show. Yeah. So we're kicking off that series tonight. Here's the thing. When I was thinking of reality shows or TV shows that I watched growing up, I realized that I didn't really watch reality shows. Growing up, I was really big into cartoons, and just a confession, I'm really into cartoons now. I still watch cartoons. You can't beat a good cartoon. I want to know, is there anybody here tonight, like you like some cartoons, like that's your jam? Whether it be anime or whatever it is, you're a fan of cartoons. Man, I love me some cartoons. Now, growing up, my top 3 favorite cartoons were as following, and you can make some noise if you're a fan of this cartoon, but man, I loved me some Dragon Ball Z. Woo! Man, I used to run around as a kid talking about, just trying to power up. If you don't watch Dragon Ball Z, you don't get that. If you do, you get it, and you're like, me too. I tried it too. I used to love Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Man, I had the Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I remember in the 3rd grade, there was a hurricane, and I had ordered some Yu-Gi-Oh cards online, and I remember sitting like the tree's about to break, and I'm like, are my Yu-Gi-Oh cards gonna come? That FedEx man better bring me my Yu-Gi-Oh cards in this hurricane. We're gonna have a problem. But by far, Pokemon was tight. By far, my favorite cartoon. And you can make some crazy wild noise if this is your favorite cartoon, but trumps it all. My favorite cartoon growing up was Fairly Odd Parents. Does anybody know that show? It's my jam. Now here's the thing. I got to school you real quick because back when I was growing up, when you wanted to watch a TV show, things didn't work how they work today. Now today, if you want to watch a TV show, you'd be like, oh, Netflix. Bam, Stranger Things. I just watched all of season 2 and it was crazy. On demand. But back then, we couldn't do that. If we wanted to watch a show, we had to go to this channel called the TV Guide channel. Y'all know about the TV Guide channel. So the TV Guide channel was this all-powerful, all-knowing master of the TV. If you wanted to know what show was on, you would have to sit and watch the TV Guide. And at any given moment, you can sit for 3 to 5 minutes waiting to find out what show is on the channel that you want to go to. And if you just so happen to turn your head for like 30 seconds because your sibling called your name, you'd miss it. And then you'd have to start all over again. But I remember I'd sit there, I'd watch TV Guide, and I'd be looking at Nickelodeon, right? And I'd be waiting for the channel. Back when I grew up, it was channel 59. I don't know what it was here, but it was 59. And so I'd be waiting for Nickelodeon to come on the TV Guide, and then I'd see it. Ooh, and if it was Fairly Odd Parents, I'd jump up. I'd run to the pantry, right? And you got to get the right snackage. You got to get the right snackage. And I come back with my Funyuns because Funyuns are the best chips of all time. Why is it I'm always bringing chips up here? Anybody want some chips? Yeah. Okay. I'm going this way. Don't distract your table. Oh. So I turn to Nickelodeon, right? I turn to Nickelodeon and then bam.
Mom and Dad and Vicky always giving him commands. Boom and boom up in his room, smoking instantly. Eyes magic little fish who grants every wish. Cause in reality, they are his odd parents, fairly odd parents.
Wands and wings, floaty crowny things.
Odd parents, fairly odd parents. Really odd, neat, hop, 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 hop.
Juice, rubber goose, green rose, guava juice, giant snake, birthday cake, large rice, chocolate shake.
Odd parents, fairly odd parents. It lets you live when you are a kid with fairly odd parents.
Yeah, right.
So good. So good. That was my jam. Love me some Fairly. I get amped. So if you don't know about Fairly Odd Parents, let me break it down for you. Fairly Odd Parents is a show about 10-year-old Timmy Turner.
I watched it all day.
Now, Timmy Turner's neglected by his parents, and he has this torturous babysitter named Vicky. They gave her a nickname. It was Icky Vicky. If your name's Vicky, I'm sorry if you've ever been called Icky. It comes from that show. But Timmy's life was a mess. And so he's granted two fairy godparents named Cosmo and Wanda, who grant his every wish. Now, growing up, I connected with Timmy. It wasn't just because, who doesn't want fairy godparents to grant every wish, right? Like, everybody wants that. It wasn't just because of that, but really it was because Timmy came from a fractured family. And so did I. I connected with Timmy on that level. I wish I could say that my family was like one of those perfect families that we see on TV shows, but it wasn't. In fact, my family was a whole lot more like the families we see on reality shows. You see, in my household, there was no such thing as an indoor voice. And so yelling was the form of communication that we adopted. This is how we spoke all the time. Hey, Stephanie, what, Justin? Hey, Courtney, what, Justin? This was how we communicated in my house, and doors were slammed, and things were thrown, and it wasn't always Funyun bags. Although if it were Funyun bags, I'd be happy about that. Don't get me wrong. There were some really good moments growing up. But there were also a whole lot of really bad ones too. And every time things got crazy, I would think to myself, this isn't how it's supposed to be. And maybe you can relate to that. Maybe your family has a lot more reality show moments than perfect family moments. And maybe like me, as you've gotten older, you've begun to notice more things. You're noticing things that you didn't notice when you were a little kid. You're noticing tension. And maybe for you, there aren't doors being slammed. Things aren't being thrown. But maybe you notice that the energy in the room changes when your parents talk about money. When your parents talk about the grandparents. When they talk about vacation. When they talk about step siblings. Or any other subject for that matter. And all of this tension makes your house a really stressful place to live. Maybe you're noticing secrets. Maybe as you've gotten older, you've discovered some things about your family that you wish you hadn't. Secrets about relationships, affairs, legal problems, or bad decisions. And maybe you've noticed fractures. Maybe your family has some obvious broken spots. Maybe you've previously experienced a divorce or a remarriage, and at the time it didn't seem like a big deal, but as you've gotten older, you've realized that it's affected you more than you initially thought. Whatever the issue, you've probably started to realize just how messed up your family is. See, your family isn't like your friend's family. Your family isn't like those families you see at church that just seem to be so perfect. And because of that, it's led you to believe the same thing that I came to believe growing up. This isn't how it's supposed to be. If you've ever felt that way, I want you to know tonight, you are not alone. Nearly everyone in this room has looked at their family and thought, that's not how a dad is supposed to act, what a mom's supposed to do, or how siblings are meant to treat each other. And we've all compared our family to someone else's or some TV family and felt like our reality just didn't quite measure up. Because here's the truth, in some way or another, every family is fractured. Listen, this isn't just a Christian thing, a church family thing. It's a people thing. That's why no matter what you believe about God tonight, I think that the next few weeks could be helpful for you. I think you can grow from this series. Because we all live in a family that in some way, shape, or form makes us feel like we're in a reality show. And for most of us, the messed up parts about our family, those are things that are way out of our control. But because of that, we usually respond in two ways. The first way that we respond is we count them out. We decide that our dad isn't a good dad, or stepmom isn't a good role model, and they probably never will be. So we use their mistakes as a reason or an excuse not to listen. We say things like, you didn't do this, or you didn't do that. We come up with all these reasons. We count them out. Second thing we do is we count us out. Now, most of us won't say this out loud, but we give up on our families. We stay out as much as possible, doing everything you can to not have to go home, or maybe you stay in your room as much as possible. Maybe you've thought, I've had enough. I'm done with my dad being late. I'm done with my mom nagging me. I'm just done. And I'm going to count down the days so I can get up out of here. The thing is, even with that mentality, there's still something inside of you, right? That says that you can't just give up on your family. There's something inside of you that no matter how bad it is, you're like, I can't give up on them. But what other options do we have? I mean, if you can't fix your fractured family and giving up on them doesn't feel right, what else can we do? Well, the family we're going to be talking about today gives us some clues on what to do with our fractured family. And at first glance, you're going to feel like you have absolutely nothing in common with this family, but trust me, it's not how it seems. So we're going to look at the book of Hebrews, and Hebrews is a letter written to Jewish Christians who lived after the time of Jesus. Now, we don't know exactly who wrote the letter, but the purpose of the letter is super clear. It's to help these new Jesus followers stay strong in their faith in what would be a very tough time for them. One of the ways the author does this is by reminding the readers of some of the greatest stories among their ancestors. In fact, chapter 11, where we're going to be camping out, is often referred to as the Hall of Faith because it's filled with these legendary characters that they would know. It's filled with legendary characters, and some of those people are people like Abraham, people like Noah who built the ark, and people like Moses who led the Egyptians who led the Israelites out of Egypt and into the promised land eventually. And they all have powerful faith stories. And so we have all these powerful people, right? But then right in the middle, of these legendary people of the faith is a little snippet of a family story that you might miss. And even if you're looking for it, you might still miss it. Here's what it says, Hebrews 11:20. It's on the screens. It was by faith that Isaac promised blessings for the future to his sons, Jacob and Esau. Isn't that nice? It's like a perfect little TV family, and it's a perfect dad who's like, you guys get the blessings, we love you. And I imagine like cheesy music playing in the background. Blessings, blessings, blessings. But for the readers of this letter, they knew better. Because they grew up hearing the story of Isaac, Jacob, and Esau, and they knew that this family was anything but perfect. But before we get to that, some history first. You see, God promised Abraham, who we know now is the father of the Jewish people, that he was going to have a ton of descendants. In fact, God said that the whole world would be blessed through him. Eventually, Abraham had a son named Isaac, and Isaac would go on to get married and have children of his own. These children were two twins, Esau and Jacob. Esau and Jacob grew up like most siblings grow up, arguing, fighting. But they didn't forget the promise that God had made to their grandfather. See, God promised that Abraham would be the beginning of a great nation, a promise passed down to their father Isaac. So basically, this great nation would eventually come through one of the twins, either Esau or Jacob. Well, that's where things get kind of tricky. See, toward the end of Isaac's life, he called both of his sons to give them his final blessing. In their culture, a blessing kind of worked like a last will would in ours. It was the legal passing of the family wealth from the parent to the child. It also determined who the next leader of the family would be. And it would have been assumed that the person would eventually be the recipient of God's promise. Basically, the blessing was everything. And typically the oldest child was the one to receive it. And even though Jacob and Esau were twins, Esau was born first. So the biggest blessing would have gone to him. So Isaac said to Esau, his oldest son, Genesis 27:4, prepare me the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me to eat. Okay, Isaac, I can get with that. So that I may give you my blessing before I die. It's pretty simple. He says, hey, make me a meal, and I'm going to give you the blessing. But how's this for a plot twist? See, Esau's mom, Rebecca, she'd been around the corner eavesdropping on the conversation, and she felt like Jacob should be the family leader. So she comes to Jacob, and she says, hurry up, go get the goats, make dinner. And because Isaac was old and his eyesight was bad, Rebekah told Jacob to try and trick his dad into giving him the blessing. And Jacob wasn't sure about it. He was like, I don't know if this is going to work. But it's not for the reason that you think. It's actually kind of for a funny reason. Genesis 27, verses 11 through 13. Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, but my brother Esau is a hairy man, while I have smooth skin. Okay. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing. The issue here is I've got silky smooth skin and my brother's a hairy beast. That's the problem. That's why he wasn't sure. He was like, how are we going to fake this? They didn't have Chewbacca costumes back then. That wasn't going to work. So his mother said to him, my son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me. Rebecca. Get behind me, Rebecca. Man, Rebecca wasn't even trying to hide the fact that Jacob was her favorite. She was just throwing it all out there. I like Jacob more than you, Esau. Makes your mom look like a pretty good mom, right? So Rebecca eventually convinces Jacob to trick his dad into giving him the family blessing by putting the animal hair to make himself hairy to the touch. And so it works. Jacob puts on the the animal hair, and he goes in and his father touches him, and his father believes that he's Esau, and his father gives him the blessing. How's that for some drama? How's that for a reality show moment? And obviously when Esau found out, Esau was not happy. And after some heated conversation, the Bible tells us that Esau planned to murder Jacob. Listen, bro, I have gotten into some heated conversations with my sisters, but I've never been like, Stephanie, I'm going to kill you. Like, for real, for real. I've got a plan. It's going to go down. Esau had a plan, and it was going to go down. So you know what Rebecca did? You know what their mom did? Yo, Jacob, go to your uncle's so you don't get murdered. It's probably a good thing. I don't know, man. When I read this story, it makes me feel a whole lot better about my family, right? Like, at least, like, I don't have siblings that are literally trying to kill themselves and stealing blessings. I feel a whole lot better about my family. But that's why this story is fascinating. Man, we're talking about a chapter in the Bible where they're talking about faith. And this family is placed right in the mix. How is that even possible? How could this family be an example of anything having to do with God or faith? Because they were a mess. Look at what the writer of Hebrews says about them. Hebrews 11:20. It was by faith that Isaac promised blessings for the future to his sons. You see, in all the drama, it's easy to forget what's really going on. God had promised Abraham and Isaac something for their family. And even though there were weird moments and bad situations, the very act of passing the blessing to Jacob or Esau was an act of faith. It was a way of saying, I believe what God said about us is true, and I believe that he has something good for our future. It was a way of believing that their family story, though difficult, wasn't over. God had a plan, and they trusted him to come through for them. Now listen, that may not seem like a big deal, but for some of us here tonight, believing this truth would be a game changer for our families. If you walked in here tonight thinking my family is fractured and messed up, then you're totally right. They are. Because all families are fractured. Because they're made up of fractured and broken people. And that includes you and that includes me. But that doesn't mean it's the end of the story. Because just like Isaac, Jacob, and Esau's family, God is right in the middle of your family story. In fact, for a lot of you, the greatest act of faith tonight could be to believe this. God can use a fractured family. To believe that God can use a fractured family. But what does that mean? How does this idea play out in real life? How does it play out? Well, the first thing is this. If you've got a fractured family, don't count them out. You see, your family will mess up. Because everybody who lives at your house is a fractured person, but when they mess up, don't write them off as if it's the last thing that they'll ever do. Because their story isn't over. You can choose to believe the best about them when their actions aren't the best. You know why? Because fractured doesn't mean finished. You have more influence than you think with your family members. Your belief in them can go a long way in helping them live out God's story. That's why this week, when you're tempted to point out their mistakes and think they're worthless, I want you to do something different. I want you to believe the best about them. Believe that even if they messed up and hurt you, it wasn't necessarily intentional. And even if they let you down again, that it's possible they'll do better next time. And even if they're behaving poorly, believe that God hasn't given up on them. Because fractured does not mean finished. The second thing you got to do is you can't count yourself out. Don't count yourself out. Listen, you don't know what's going to happen next, so don't check out. Don't ignore your family or daydream about the time when you can walk away. Because if you do, you might miss out on being a part of an incredible story that God is writing in your family. So this week, when you're tempted to ignore them, I want you to re-engage them. Talk to them, listen to them, and pray for them. Ask questions about the things they love and stick around long enough to hear their answers. And when you do, you'll be communicating not only that God's still a part of their story, but you are too, because fractured doesn't mean finished. God can use a fractured family. God's not done with them yet, and God's not done with you yet. So as you head out today, I want you to do this. I want you to think about which members of your family you're tempted to give up on or walk away from. What would it look like for you not to count them out? What would you do or say differently if you trusted that God could still use your fractured family? The reality is this: no family is TV show perfect. In fact, most are broken more than anyone knows. But God can still use your family's reality for his purposes. So don't count them out. Don't give up. Because God can use a fractured family. Amen. Let's pray. God, thank you for everyone that came here tonight. God, thank you that we get to be a part of something so incredible. Father, right now, I just pray for any student under the sound of my voice that comes from a fractured family, that's tempted to count them out, that's tempted to count themselves out. Father, I pray that they would leave here tonight changed. Father, I pray for the conversations that we're about to have in small group time tonight. I pray that they would be life-changing. Father, we thank you. We love you. And it's in your name. And everybody said,